Alright, so here's the deal. If you guys don't remember, we got this car probably about a year ago. We got this car from Mitsubishi distribution. The car was built by Super Street for a series with Mitsubishi distribution, similar to what we did with our Type R. Then Mitsubishi gets bought out by Turn 14, the cars go in limbo. Voila, we now have our Type R back with the Super Street Evo. Problem is, we knew nothing that was done to the Evo. The only information that we have on this Evo is information that I wrote down after I watched the entire build series on the car. That's it. To the point that we didn't even know what fuel it was running. We knew that it was not running on pump gas, but we also questioned if it was running on E85. Nobody would give us clear answers. We had no idea. So we just assumed, well, smells similar to E85, so it's gotta be E85, right? Wrong. Drive the car on E85, obviously it's not tuned for it, car starts acting up, car shuts off, voila, here we are. After a while, Mike Sanders, the guy who actually owns the Evo, finally got in touch with somebody who worked on the car, and the guy said, it's not on pump gas, but it's not on E85, it was tuned for something that was local to the track that they were racing it at the time. So probably like a 110, or some sort of race gas similar to that. So we've been running this car on E85 this whole time, assuming that's what it was tuned for when it wasn't. Excel has done some tinkering on it, trying to figure out kind of what's going on, what needs to be done to remedy the situation, and more importantly, to see if the engine is actually blown. So let's go talk to Alan, the owner, and figure out what they found out so far. So this is Alan Kearns. Alan is the owner of Excel Motorworks here in Buford, Georgia. We had the car, actually Alan came and got the car for us because we didn't trust the car to drive here. It ran, but not very well. We just assumed maybe it blew a head gasket or, you know, spun a rod bearing or something. We weren't exactly sure what was wrong with it, but we definitely didn't want to drive it. Alan and his team did some diagnosing and found otherwise. You want to walk us through kind of what you found?
Yeah, so what we started with doing was a compression test on all 4 cylinders to make sure that the motor and everything was in a healthy shape, make sure that we weren't starting with just a dud. We then performed a leak down test just to make sure that there was no leakage in the cylinders, which ended up coming back a little bit on the bad side, right around at 60% leak down, which some people would say it's bad, some people say it's good. The state of the car when we got it, when we realized that it was a race car, was kind of a area where we were like, well, let's try to see if we can save it, because in some cases we run into situations where the car will run so rich that it'll end up washing the cylinders out on the motor. However, I feel like this one's right at that threshold to where we can save it, or we can do a short block. But we're going to try to save it first, because the motor, I mean, it runs super healthy as long as you don't get on it or anything. But I want to try to save this one, just because I feel like it's right in that area where we can make something happen.
So at 60% leak down, what is, in your opinion, the correct move? Where are we going from here?
So what we're going to end up doing right now, with the data that we got back from doing all our testing, we're just going to end up pulling all the old fuel system stuff out. We're going to end up putting the car back on pump gas from ethanol, just because it's a retired race car now. Nobody's racing it or anything, so we're going to try to keep the motor as healthy as possible, not put it under so much stress. Generally, I like these cars on ethanol. However, the customer requested that he wanted to have something that was a little more streetable. So we're going to go ahead and pull all that old stuff out, put all the new stuff in from Deatschwerks, and see what happens. We're going to put a little ATF in the cylinders as well, just to make sure we can get those rings of seat, and go from there.
So as you heard Alan mention, we are going to be putting a full Deatschwerks fueling system in the car. Deatschwerks sent us a big box of parts. We got 1000cc injectors, new fuel pump, fuel rails, fuel regulator, new fuel pressure gauge, the whole 9 yards from Deatschwerks here in this box. So what we're going to do now is start tearing this thing apart, and Alan and his team are going to get this car put back together. We're going to get a new tune on it, and we're going to see if this thing ends up healthier than it was before. Fingers crossed.
We just got done installing the Deatschwerks fuel rail. with the new Deatschwerks 1000cc injectors. We're now taking all the hardware and fittings that they provided, which is nice, to be able to be compatible with the factory fuel system, like the factory fuel lines and stuff like that.
So that's going to sum it up for today. As you saw, we got, the fuel pressure regulator, the new injectors, the fuel rail, the fuel pump, all that. The only thing that didn't get done today was the fuel filter, just because the fueling setup that's currently on the Evo is obviously not a factory setup. So we were missing some bigger fittings to use the fuel filter, so we didn't get that on today. And we ran out of time to get a base map on the car, so there will be a base map put on the car tomorrow. That way it can function and run on pump gas. And then we are going to cut until we can find some dyno time on Sissio Performance's all-wheel drive dyno to get a solid tune and find some solid power numbers out, and also figure out if the car is going to kill itself. As you saw, the car has a 60% leak down. The idea is that with the new fueling setup, with pump gas, because the E85, because we don't think it was truly tuned for E85, it kind of washed out the cylinders. That's why the leak down was as bad as it was. Hopefully the rings will kind of reseat themselves with the new fueling system and appropriately tuned for the pump gas. So we'll see if that happens. So we'll run the car, then do another leak down test and see if it has improved any, and hopefully the car will no longer try to kill itself. So let's go on and cut over to the dyno and see what happens.